The shattered bones in Gabriel Thornton's leg weren't nearly as broken as his pride when they carried him off the mountain that fateful December morning. One minute, he was carving through pristine powder on an expert slope in Aspen, feeling invincible as he always did. The next, he was a crumpled heap against a tree, his screams echoing across the mountainside while fellow skiers gathered in horrified witness to his downfall. "Mr. Thornton, I understand you're frustrated, but if you keep refusing your therapy sessions, your recovery timeline will extend significantly." Dr. Hayes peered at Gabriel over his glasses, his clipboard clutched firmly in his hands. Gabriel glared back from his hospital bed. 3 surgeries in 2 weeks, a titanium rod and multiple pins holding his shattered femur together, and all he could think about was the empire he'd built that was now running without him. "I don't have time for this. I have a board meeting next week that I can't miss." Gabriel's voice was steel, the same tone that had helped him build Thornton Industries into a technology giant worth billions. "You won't be attending any meetings if you can't walk, Mr. Thornton, and right now, walking is months away if you cooperate with your rehabilitation." Dr. Hayes sighed. "I'm assigning our best physical therapist to your case. She specializes in catastrophic injuries and has an excellent track record with challenging patients." Gabriel scoffed. "I'm not challenging, I'm busy." "You're both," Dr. Hayes replied flatly. "Lucia will be here tomorrow morning. I suggest you reconsider your attitude by then." After the doctor left, Gabriel stared at the ceiling, mentally calculating the financial impact of his extended absence. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages from his executive team, but for once in his life, Gabriel Thornton felt utterly powerless. When morning came, Gabriel had barely slept. The pain medication made his thoughts foggy, a sensation he despised almost as much as the pain itself. A gentle knock at his door interrupted his brooding. "Mr. Thornton?" "I'm Lucia Lawson, your physical therapist." Gabriel looked up, expecting to see another clinical face in the parade of medical staff that had been poking and prodding him. Instead, he found himself looking at a woman about his age, early 30s, with intelligent hazel eyes and chestnut hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wasn't dressed in typical scrubs but wore athletic pants and a quarter-zip top with the hospital logo. "Doctor Hayes tells me you're eager to get back to work," she said, approaching his bed with a confident stride. "What I'm eager for is competent care so I can get out of here," Gabriel replied tersely. Lucia didn't flinch at his tone. Instead, she placed her tablet on the bedside table and pulled up a chair. "Let me be clear, Mr. Thornton. I understand you're used to giving orders and having people jump. That won't work here. Your recovery depends entirely on your willingness to follow my guidance and put in the hard work." Gabriel narrowed his eyes. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," she replied simply. "You're my patient with a complex femoral fracture, multiple soft tissue injuries, and apparently an attitude problem." For a moment, Gabriel was speechless, a rare occurrence in boardrooms and business negotiations. Before he could formulate a suitably cutting response, Lucia continued. "I've read your file. 3 surgeries, extensive reconstruction, and a long road ahead. But I've seen worse cases walk out of here and return to their lives. That can be you, but only if we're partners in this." Something in her direct approach caught Gabriel's attention. She wasn't intimidated, wasn't fawning over his wealth or status. She was simply focused on the job at hand. "Fine. What's first?" he asked. "First, we talk about expectations, real ones." Lucia pulled out her tablet and showed him a timeline. "Best case scenario, with intensive therapy and your full cooperation, you're looking at 6 to 8 months before you're walking unassisted." 8 months. Gabriel felt the blood drain from his face. "That's impossible. I can't be away from my company that long. You can work from your recovery bed once you're discharged, but your body needs time to heal, Mr. Thornton. There are no shortcuts, not even for billionaires." The next 2 weeks were the hardest of Gabriel's life. The pain of therapy often left him drenched in sweat. Cursing through gritted teeth, as Lucia pushed him through exercises designed to maintain muscle tone without disturbing his healing bone. "I thought physical therapists were supposed to be compassionate," Gabriel gasped one day after a particularly grueling session. Lucia, who was recording his progress on her tablet, looked up with a hint of amusement. "I am being compassionate. If I weren't, I'd let you give up and spend the rest of your life dependent on others." "Is that what happens to your difficult patients?" "My difficult patients eventually become my success stories," she replied. "They just don't realize it until they're walking out the door." By the third week, Gabriel had been moved to a private rehabilitation facility on the outskirts of the city, a luxury establishment that catered to wealthy clients with extensive needs. He'd had a state-of-the-art home office set up in his suite, and between therapy sessions, he was back to running his company via video conferences and phone calls. Lucia had agreed to continue as his therapist, commuting to the facility 3 times a week. On those days, Gabriel found himself watching the clock, anticipating her arrival with an interest that went beyond the professional help she provided. "You're cheating yourself," Lucia said during their 4th week of therapy. Gabriel was attempting to strengthen his upper body, preparing for the crutches he would eventually need. "What are you talking about?" Gabriel lowered the hand weights. "I'm doing exactly what you asked. In our sessions, yes, but you're not doing the exercises I've assigned for your off days." Lucia crossed her arms. "Your progress should be further along by now." Gabriel avoided her gaze. "I've been busy. The Hong Kong merger can't wait just because I'm laid up. Neither can your recovery. Your body doesn't care about your merger." Lucia sat on the edge of the exercise mat. "Why did you even hire me if you're not going to do the work?" "I didn't hire you," Gabriel snapped. "The hospital assigned you. And yet you arranged for me to continue your care here at considerable expense." Lucia's expression softened slightly. "What's really going on, Gabriel?" It was the first time she'd used his first name, and something about the way it sounded in her voice made him pause. "I don't know how to not be working," he admitted finally. "My company needs me." "So do you," Lucia replied quietly. "What good is saving your company if you sacrifice your health to do it?" Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, Gabriel saw genuine concern in hers. Not the clinical evaluation of a healthcare professional, but something more personal. It unsettled him. "I'll do better," he promised, surprising himself with how much he meant it. True to his word, Gabriel began dedicating himself to his recovery with the same intensity he brought to his business dealings. He arranged his work schedule around his therapy, not the other way around. When Lucia wasn't there, he followed her regimen religiously, pushing through pain and frustration. By the 3rd month, he'd progressed to standing briefly with assistance. The first time he managed to bear weight on his injured leg, even for just a few seconds, the triumph in Lucia's eyes matched his own sense of victory. "That's it," she exclaimed, supporting him as he balanced precariously. "How does it feel?" "Like a miracle," Gabriel admitted, his hands gripping her arms tightly. They were standing close, her body helping to stabilize his. He noticed the light freckles across her nose, the flecks of gold in her hazel eyes. Lucia helped him back into his wheelchair, her touch professional but somehow gentler than before. "You earned this milestone. You've been working incredibly hard." "I had the right motivation," Gabriel said, his eyes never leaving hers. Over the next several weeks, Gabriel found himself looking forward to therapy sessions for reasons that had nothing to do with his recovery. He enjoyed Lucia's company, her sharp wit, and the way she challenged him without hesitation. She never treated him like Gabriel Thornton, tech billionaire. To her, he was just Gabriel, a patient working to reclaim his independence. During one session, as Gabriel practiced walking with crutches, he asked, "Why physical therapy? What made you choose this career?" Lucia adjusted her stance to better spot him as he moved. "My brother was in a car accident when I was in high school. The physical therapist who worked with him changed our whole family's life. I wanted to do that for others." "Your brother recovered completely. He runs marathons now," She smiled at the memory. What about you? Why technology? Gabriel concentrated on his next steps before answering. I've always been fascinated by how things work, by building something from nothing. My father wanted me to take over his law practice, but I had other ideas. So you became a billionaire instead. Quite the rebellion. Gabriel laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even him. It wasn't about the money, it was about creation, about solving problems no one else could solve. That I understand, Lucia said softly. By the 5th month, Gabriel was using a cane for short distances and managing longer periods of work without exhaustion. His executive team had adapted to his remote management style, and Thornton Industries was thriving despite his physical absence from headquarters. One evening, after a particularly successful therapy session, Gabriel asked Lucia to stay for dinner. The facility's chef had prepared a meal that they ate on the private terrace of Gabriel's suite, overlooking the facility's manicured grounds. This is crossing a professional boundary, Lucia remarked, though she accepted the glass of wine he offered. Consider it a celebration of progress, Gabriel suggested. 5 months ago, I couldn't stand. Today, I walked 50 feet with just a cane. Your determination is remarkable, Lucia acknowledged. Most patients would have given up when faced with setbacks like yours. I'm not most patients. No, she agreed with a small smile. You're definitely not. As they ate, their conversation drifted away from therapy and recovery, exploring their interests and backgrounds. Gabriel learned that Lucia had grown up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston, had played soccer through college, and volunteered at a clinic for underserved communities on weekends. He found himself sharing stories of his own childhood memories he rarely discussed, the early struggles of building his company, his passion for mountaineering that had led to his accident. You think you'll ski again? Lucia asked as they finished their meal. Gabriel hesitated. I hadn't really thought about it. Doctors said it would be possible eventually, but what? I'm not sure I want to, he admitted. For the first time in my life, I've been forced to slow down to reevaluate what matters. Nearly dying on that mountain changed something in me. Lucia studied him thoughtfully. That's not uncommon after a traumatic injury. People often reassess their priorities. And what about you? Gabriel asked, leaning forward slightly. What are your priorities, Lucia? She seemed taken aback by the directness of his question. My work, my family. Living a life that matters. And is there someone special in that life? Gabriel held his breath, suddenly aware of how much her answer mattered to him. Lucia set down her wine glass. I think it's time for me to go, Gabriel. This is veering into territory that's inappropriate for our professional relationship. What if I don't want it to be just professional anymore? The words escaped before he could reconsider them. You don't know what you want, Lucia replied gently. You're in a vulnerable state, dependent on my care. Any feelings you think you have are likely just gratitude or attachment to the person helping you recover. That's not true, Gabriel protested, but Lucia was already standing. Thank you for dinner. I'll see you on Thursday for our regular session. She gathered her things and left, leaving Gabriel alone with his thoughts and a growing certainty that what he felt was far more than gratitude. The next few weeks brought a strained quality to their sessions. Lucia maintained a strictly professional demeanor, focusing entirely on Gabriel's physical progress and avoiding the personal conversations that had become their norm. Gabriel respected her boundaries, but found himself missing their easy rapport. As Gabriel's mobility improved, he began making brief trips to his corporate headquarters, rebuilding his physical presence in the company while continuing his therapy regimen. During one such visit, he was surprised to find Lucia in the lobby of Thornton Tower. What are you doing here? He asked, genuinely confused. Their session wasn't scheduled until the following day. Lucia looked equally surprised to see him. I'm consulting on an ergonomic workspace design for your HR department. They're implementing a wellness program. You're working with my company. Gabriel felt a surge of pleasure at the connection. It's a side project. I didn't realize you'd be here today." They stood awkwardly in the busy lobby, professional distance at odds with the familiarity they'd developed over 6 months of intensive therapy. "Let me show you around," Gabriel offered impulsively. "Since you're helping improve my employees' work environment, you should see what we do here." Lucia hesitated but ultimately agreed. Gabriel led her through the building, moving slowly with his cane but with growing confidence. He introduced her to key team members, showed her the innovation labs, and finally brought her to his office on the top floor with its sweeping views of the city. "This is impressive," Lucia admitted, taking in the sophisticated space. "Though I notice your chair isn't ergonomically optimal." Gabriel laughed. "Perhaps you should add that to your consultation." "Perhaps I should." Lucia smiled, the first genuine smile she'd given him in weeks. "Have dinner with me," Gabriel said suddenly. "Not as my therapist, not as a consultant for my company, just as yourself." Lucia's smile faded. "Gabriel, we've discussed this. That was weeks ago when I was still essentially an invalid. Look at me now." He gestured to himself, standing tall with only minimal support from his cane. "In another month, I won't need your professional services at all. Then what excuse will you have?" "I don't need an excuse to maintain professional boundaries," Lucia replied, but her tone lacked conviction. "One dinner," Gabriel pressed. "If you still think there's nothing between us but a therapist-patient relationship, I'll never bring it up again." After a long moment, Lucia nodded. "One dinner. After your final evaluation." 4 weeks later, Gabriel stood without assistance in Dr. Hayes's office, demonstrating his range of motion and strength. Lucia watched from the corner, her professional mask firmly in place, but Gabriel caught the pride in her eyes as doctor. Hayes declared his recovery remarkable. "You'll need to continue your maintenance exercises, and I wouldn't recommend returning to extreme sports for at least another 6 months," Dr. Hayes cautioned. "But you're officially discharged from formal physical therapy." Gabriel shook the doctor's hand, then turned to Lucia. "I believe this means you're no longer professionally obligated to keep your distance." Dr. Hayes raised an eyebrow but tactfully excused himself, leaving them alone in the examination room. "You've made an incredible recovery," Lucia said, her voice slightly unsteady. "You should be very proud." "I had an incredible therapist," Gabriel replied, "and I believe she owes me a dinner date." That evening, Gabriel picked Lucia up at her apartment in his chauffeur-driven car. He'd made reservations at an intimate restaurant known for its excellent food rather than its exclusivity, a deliberate choice to put Lucia at ease. "You look beautiful," Gabriel said truthfully as she entered the car. Gone was the practical ponytail and athletic wear, replaced by a simple emerald dress that brought out the green in her hazel eyes. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." Lucia smoothed her hands over her dress nervously. "This feels strange, because you're used to seeing me in pain." Gabriel teased, "Because I'm used to being your therapist, not your date." At the restaurant, they were seated at a quiet corner table. Gabriel ordered wine for them both, and as they settled into conversation, the awkwardness gradually melted away. "I have a confession," Gabriel said after their appetizers arrived. "I could have graduated from therapy 3 weeks ago, but I kept finding reasons to need just a few more sessions." Lucia's eyes widened. "You were faking your recovery timeline, not faking extending," Gabriel clarified. "I wasn't ready to stop seeing you. That's—" "I don't know whether to be flattered or horrified," Lucia said, but a smile played at her lips. "Be flattered. I've never prolonged any kind of medical treatment before. Usually I'm trying to rush through it." As the evening progressed, Gabriel found himself more captivated than ever by Lucia's intelligence and warmth. Away from the clinical setting, she revealed more of herself, her passion for travel, her dream of opening a rehabilitation center for underprivileged children, her wickedly funny sense of humor. "Why didn't I see this side of you during our sessions?" Gabriel asked as they shared a dessert. "Because I was busy keeping you focused and motivated," Lucia replied, "and maintaining professional boundaries." "And now," Lucia met his gaze, Now I'm wondering if those boundaries were protecting you or me. What do you mean? She hesitated before answering. I've never been attracted to a patient before. It was unsettling, especially because you're who you are, a difficult patient, Gabriel suggested with a smile. A billionaire tech CEO with a life completely different from mine. Lucia shook her head. What could we possibly have in common beyond these last 6 months? Gabriel reached across the table, taking her hand in his. More than you might think. We're both driven, passionate about our work. We both value independence but understand the importance of connection. And we've spent 6 months getting to know each other under circumstances where pretense is impossible. I was literally at my worst, and you still saw something in me worth your time. That's my job, Lucia protested weakly. Your job was to help me walk again. Not to make me laugh on my darkest days or challenge my perspective on what matters, or make me look forward to physical therapy like a teenager waiting for a date. Lucia's cheeks flushed. You didn't make my job easy, you know. You were supposed to be just another patient. And you were supposed to be just another therapist. Gabriel squeezed her hand. Life rarely goes according to plan. My skiing accident taught me that. After dinner, they walked slowly along the waterfront, Gabriel using his cane more for security than necessity. The night air was cool but pleasant, and Lucia had accepted his jacket around her shoulders. What happens now? She asked as they paused to look out over the water. You go back to running your empire, flying around the world, climbing mountains metaphorical and literal. And you go back to changing lives one patient at a time, Gabriel added. But there's no reason those things can't happen while we explore whatever this is between us. It won't be simple, Lucia warned. Your world and mine don't exactly overlap. They overlapped enough to bring us together, Gabriel countered, and I'm willing to build new intersections. Lucia turned to face him fully. You're used to getting what you want. Not always, Gabriel said, thinking of the months of frustration and pain, the humbling experience of depending on others. But I've learned that the things worth having are worth working for, worth waiting for. Under the moonlight, with the gentle sound of water lapping against the shore, Gabriel leaned forward and kissed her. Lucia hesitated only briefly before responding, her arms slipping around his waist as his free hand cupped her face. When they finally broke apart, Gabriel rested his forehead against hers. I may have broken my leg, but you've completely captured my heart, Lucia Lawson. That's a terrible line, she laughed softly, but her eyes shone with emotion. I'll work on my delivery, Gabriel promised. In the months that followed, Gabriel and Lucia carefully navigated the transition from therapist and patient to partners. Their relationship faced scrutiny from the media, who loved the story of the billionaire and the physical therapist, and from their respective professional circles, who questioned the ethics of their beginning. But as winter turned to spring, and spring to summer, their bond only strengthened. Gabriel found himself reevaluating his priorities, investing more in Lucia's dream of a rehabilitation center for underserved communities. Lucia learned to navigate Gabriel's world of corporate galas and board meetings, always remaining authentically herself. 1 year after his accident, Gabriel took Lucia back to Aspen not to ski, but to witness the groundbreaking of the Thornton Rehabilitation Center, a state-of-the-art facility that would provide cutting-edge physical therapy to patients regardless of their ability to pay. As they stood on the mountainside, watching the ceremonial first shovel break ground, Gabriel turned to Lucia. You know, when I crashed on this mountain, I thought my life was over. I couldn't imagine anything worse than being physically broken, dependent on others. He shook his head at the memory. I had no idea it would lead me to the best thing that's ever happened to me. Your injury was still terrible, Lucia reminded him pragmatically. Let's not romanticize traumatic accidents, Gabriel laughed, loving her practical nature. Fair enough. But the outcome has been better than I could have imagined. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Which is why I wanted to bring you back here, to transform this place from a site of my worst memory to my best. Lucia's eyes widened as Gabriel opened the box, revealing a stunning emerald ring the same color as the dress she'd worn on their first date. Lucia Lawson, you helped me stand when I thought I might never walk again. You challenged me when I needed it most. You saw past the billionaire to the broken man beneath, and you helped heal not just my body but my perspective on what really matters in life. Gabriel's voice grew thick with emotion. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Tears filled Lucia's eyes as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will. As Gabriel slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, he marveled at how completely his life had changed in a single year. From the depths of physical pain and dependency to the height of love and partnership, his journey with Lucia had transformed him in ways no business success ever could. I love you, he murmured against her lips. I love you too, Lucia replied, even when you're being a difficult patient. Gabriel laughed, holding her close against the mountain breeze. I'm not your patient anymore. No, she agreed, her eyes shining with happiness. You're my future. 2 years later, Gabriel and Lucia Thornton stood together at the grand opening of their 5th rehabilitation center. Gabriel, now fully recovered save for occasional soreness in cold weather, had redirected a significant portion of his business focus toward healthcare innovation, creating technologies that made advanced physical therapy more accessible worldwide. Lucia, while still maintaining a small clinical practice, had become the director of their foundation, using her expertise to train therapists and design programs for those most in need. As they cut the ceremonial ribbon together, their 6-month-old daughter, Emma, gurgled happily in her grandmother's arms, watching her parents with curious eyes. From a broken leg to a complete family, Gabriel whispered to Lucia as cameras flashed around them. Best recovery ever. Lucia squeezed his hand, remembering the angry, frustrated man she'd met in that hospital room years before. I'm so proud of how far you've come, she said, in every possible way. Gabriel kissed her cheek, knowing he would never again take for granted the simple ability to stand on his own 2 feet or the extraordinary woman who had helped him find not just his physical strength, but the true purpose of his life.